Have you ever received a phone call that completely shattered your reality? I'm talking about the kind of call that makes you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. Well, that's exactly what happened to me on an ordinary Tuesday morning. And what followed was a revenge story that would make even the most seasoned karma enthusiast applaud. I'm Lana Anderson, and at 29, I was living what most people would call a modest but stable life. Picture this. A tiny apartment where I ate lunch, standing by the sink because it was the only spot that caught sunlight, my mattress still on the floor because who has money for a bed frame, right? I was the responsible one in my family. You know the type. The daughter who always paid her bills on time, never missed a credit card payment, and had a credit score that sparkled like a diamond. That Tuesday at 11:43 a.m., my microwave clock glowing like a neon warning sign, my phone buzzed with an out-of-state number. I almost ignored it. God, I wish I had. But something made me pick up, and that single decision would unravel my entire world. Is this Lana Anderson? The voice was crisp, professional, the kind that delivers life-changing news without a hint of emotion. This is Tracy from Silver Oak Mortgage Servicing. We're calling about your overdue mortgage payment. We've sent multiple letters. I actually laughed. This thin, hollow sound that bounced off my kitchen cabinets and died in the silence. What mortgage? I asked, genuinely confused. The property at 412 Lavender Drive. You're listed as the primary borrower. The current outstanding balance is $523,000. My fingers gripped the counter until my knuckles went white. I rented 600 square feet. I didn't own a house. Barely owned furniture. There has to be some mistake, I whispered. But there wasn't. 18 months earlier, someone had opened a mortgage in my name. 10 months later, payments stopped. Foreclosure was already in motion. And when I asked who co-signed, the answer hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Gregory Anderson. Your father. The noodles I'd been eating sat forgotten, growing cold as my world tilted sideways. I hung up and immediately called my dad, my hands shaking as I dialed that familiar number that used to represent safety and security. Lana? He answered with that tone of mild irritation, like I'd interrupted his afternoon nap. What's going on? Did you put me on a mortgage? The words came out sharp, desperate. The silence that followed felt heavier than concrete. Finally, he said, "Why would you think that?" "Because a bank just called about a house I supposedly own, and you're listed on it too." Another pause, filled with every unfinished argument we'd ever had. Then I heard another voice in the background. Soft, familiar, devastating. My sister, Rachel. She needed help, Dad finally admitted. "You used that old power of attorney, didn't you? The one I signed when I was 18 for the student loan appeal?" My mother's voice floated through the phone, dreamy and disconnected. "We handled it. You weren't using your credit for anything important." That's when it hit me. My own family had stolen my identity. They'd forged my signature on a $500,000 mortgage so my sister could play house, and when they couldn't afford it anymore, they were perfectly content to let me take the fall. I stared at those cold noodles and felt something inside me crystallize. Not anger, that would come later. This was something cleaner, sharper. This was the moment I stopped being their convenient victim. Within an hour, I had filed a fraud affidavit. I froze my credit, reported it to the FTC, built a paper fortress of documentation. But paperwork wasn't enough. I needed help, real help. So I called Jenna Price, my college friend who'd become the kind of lawyer whose name made corporate executives nervous. Identity theft, elder abuse, ugly situation. I texted her. Urgent call when free. She called back in 6 minutes, listened to the whole sordid story without interruption. When I finished, her voice was diamond hard. "Lana, we can do this clean or we can do it loud. You decide." "What's clean?" "Affidavit, complaint, give Silver Oak a chance to correct their error. If they stall, we go loud. Injunction, discovery, depositions. Either way, you're not paying their debt." But here's where the story gets interesting. Remember how I mentioned that karma has a sense of humor? Well, turns out I had an unexpected ally. Alicia Barnes worked in Silver Oak's compliance department. She also happened to be my boyfriend, Evan's ex-girlfriend. Awkward, right? but sometimes life gives you allies in the strangest places. When Alicia saw my name in their system, something clicked. She ran a quiet review and discovered what could only be described as a fraud masterpiece. The notary who supposedly witnessed my signature. She'd been running a dog rescue in Arizona for 6 years. Her real estate license long expired. My income verification claimed I was making $147,000 as a senior software engineer. I'd never made more than $63,000 in logistics. Even the company on the letterhead didn't exist. But the real kicker? Every single mortgage payment had come from my parents' account. Rachel hadn't paid a cent toward her dream house. Not one penny. "This isn't just fraud," Alicia told me during a careful, professional phone call. "This is fraud with a bow on top." Armed with this evidence, Jenna filed an injunction that froze the foreclosure until the fraud investigation concluded. Suddenly, Silver Oak couldn't touch me legally. The current had shifted, and I wasn't drowning anymore. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I booked a flight without warning anyone. No explanations, no family meetings, just me, a rental car, and a manila folder thick with evidence. When I arrived at 412 Lavender Drive, I saw it for the first time. This perfect suburban dream house, with its manicured lawn and Rachel's white Mercedes lounging in the driveway like a pampered cat. One knock and Rachel opened the door with her practiced influencer smile, which died the moment she saw my folder. What a surprise. "I'm here about the mortgage," I said calmly. "Here's the thing about rage. Once you file it away and label it properly, it becomes incredibly efficient." "It was a team decision," she said brightly. "You weren't using your credit. You didn't ask for it. You took it." My parents appeared like they'd been waiting in the wings. Mom already apologizing. Dad setting his face to that familiar expression of reasonable authority that always meant the conversation was over before it started. I laid the folder on their marble kitchen island like a confession. "Here's what happens next. You refinance this property in your own name. My name comes off. You pay my legal fees." Rachel's voice went tight. "I can't qualify." "That sounds like your problem, not my consequence." Dad crossed his arms. The Anderson way of declaring victory through stubbornness. "You don't need to be so hostile." "Dad, you used a power of attorney I signed at 18 to tie me to a $500,000 mortgage without my knowledge." The evidence speaks louder than anything I could say. Mom's eyes filled with those perfectly timed tears. "We gave you life, Lana. And then you tried to lease it out." I gathered my folder, slid Jenna's card across the counter. "You can speak with my attorney from now on. She handles this." At the door, Rachel tried one last manipulation. "You wouldn't let your sister lose everything, would you?" I opened the door, breathed in air that smelled like wet concrete and freedom. "You let me fall for 10 months. 3 weeks later, we were in court." The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as I sat with Jenna, watching my family arrange themselves like a portrait of denial. Rachel in her reality show outfit, Dad in his best suit radiating false confidence, Mom gripping her purse like a lifeline. The bank's attorney laid out the case with surgical precision. Fraudulent notarization by someone who hadn't worked in real estate for 6 years. Fabricated income verification. Payment records showing my parents funded every payment until they couldn't, then let foreclosure fall on me. When the judge asked if the defendants wished to respond, Rachel stood with her rehearsed vulnerability act. "Your Honor, this house is my home. I thought my sister wanted to help me." The judge cut through her performance like a scalpel. "Did you obtain your sister's permission before using her credit on a mortgage exceeding $500,000? Her answer was barely a whisper. Dad fared no better. The power of attorney was years old, never executed for this transaction. Every question revealed another layer of their deception. "Then I've heard enough," the judge said. "The court authorizes foreclosure against the defendants, Gregory and Rachel Anderson. Lana Anderson is fully released from liability. Silver Oak Mortgage reserves the right to seek damages from those responsible for falsified documents." In under 15 minutes, the nightmare was over. Well, the first chapter anyway. Outside the courthouse, Dad had the audacity to say, "You didn't have to do this." "You're right," I replied quietly, "but you made sure I didn't have another choice." Mom stepped forward with her wounded grace act. "You've humiliated your sister. She managed that herself. You both just helped her get there faster." But I wasn't finished. 2 weeks later, Jenna sent me an email with the subject line, "Time to go on offense." Inside was a civil suit for damages, identity theft, credit destruction, emotional distress, loss of financial opportunity. Total, $215,000. This wasn't revenge. This was arithmetic. The price of their choices, written in black and white. The settlement offers started immediately. $20,000 with a non-disclosure agreement. Jenna didn't even pause. Add a zero or don't bother calling again. Then $60,000. No NDA, but still no apology. Then we wait, Jenna said with that predatory smile of hers. Rachel showed up at my office without warning, desperation polished into performance. "Why are you doing this? You're my sister." "I'm doing this because you committed fraud. You destroyed my credit, my name, my stability, and not once did you say you were sorry. I thought you were strong enough to handle it." I stepped closer, calm but razor sharp. "What's cruel, Rachel, is watching your family dismantle your life and calling it love. You wouldn't actually go through with this, would you?" "I already have. And here's what you need to understand. I don't owe you a relationship. I don't owe you silence. And I absolutely don't owe you forgiveness." Her perfectly made-up face collapsed. "I don't even know who you are anymore." A small smile touched my lips. That's the point. A week later, they caved. $150,000 and a written apology. No NDA, no conditions. Just acknowledgement of what they'd done and the pain they'd caused. When the money landed in my account, it felt different than I'd expected. Not like victory, but like release. Clean, lawful, done. The apology letter was short, lawyer polished, but enough. For the first time, the people who had mistaken my silence for surrender had confessed in ink. I didn't call or respond. I just photographed the signatures and saved them in a folder labeled "In case they forget." Then I blocked every number that still had power to pull me backward. 3 months later, I used part of the settlement to buy a small condo. 2 bedrooms, 1 balcony, peace included. No shared signatures, no borrowed credit. When I signed those papers, something lightened in my chest. The first key in my life that no one else could copy. That night, sitting on my bare floor among unopened boxes, I realized this wasn't victory. This was aftermath, the clean kind, where nothing is owed, nothing pending, nothing forged. I wrote about the experience on a financial survivors forum, removing names and dates but keeping the truth. The post went viral, tens of thousands of upvotes, hundreds of comments from people with similar stories. Sons whose parents opened credit cards in their names, daughters who'd co-signed loans to help family, siblings who'd been told, "You're stronger, you'll bounce back." The same truth surfaced again and again. Family loyalty, when used as leverage, isn't love. It's control. And sometimes the truest act of love is letting the leash break. Uncle Rob sent me a handwritten letter. "Proud of you. You didn't just defend yourself. You reminded the rest of us what accountability looks like. Your grandparents would have called it courage." He'd also added my name to the old lake house deed, something honest, as he put it. Months later, sitting in my own space with my own key on the coffee table, I didn't feel like someone's daughter or someone's sister. Just Lana Anderson. The woman who'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say to family isn't, "I love you" or "I forgive you." Sometimes it's simply, "No more." And you know what? That lesson was worth every penny of their debt. The debt they'd tried so hard to make mine.
Thanks for watching. You're the best. Hit subscribe, turn on notification, and comment your thoughts below. More Tama stories coming soon.